Welcome to Perfecting the Formula with our post-race analysis of the Marrakesh E-Prix. I remember this time it's an E-Prix. This is Juan and Mahesh. And let's go ahead and get started, Juan. So, one word, describe the Marrakesh E-Prix.
I would like to say BMW.
Yikes.
Actually, no, I'll take that back. Copycats.
Yeah, actually, there we go. Yeah, I like that phrase. We'll get into that in a second. If I had to go with anything, I'm going to go with a phrase. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say bold moves. So, BMW, huh, Juan?
It was a pretty interesting race towards the end. I really liked it. But also, a lot of the things that happened throughout the race was actually pretty good as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we start at the top, at the very beginning of the race, we definitely see Sam Bird got off to a non-perfect start, was playing a bit of a defensive game, and Jean-Eric Vergne, just with the first of many bold moves that we see throughout this race, just goes for a dive on the inside.
I thought that was pretty good. Surprisingly, he made it back to the same place where he... Wait, am I looking at the right stuff?
Yeah, the moment where you got to double-check your race stats.
It looks like, where he qualified, he finished at the same place.
Or no, he finished 3 spots below. Yeah,
Wait.
But yeah, he started P2 and finished P5.
P2, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
but,
I need to fix this. I'm on the Formula E site.
Oh man, but yeah, I mean, Jean-Eric Vergne, I feel like if he had pulled off the move, this would have been a very different narrative as to how we regarded him in this race.
Yes. At least at least we can compare this to. At least for a race, it shows that they're able to fight their way through if they're challenge everyone enough with Vergne. But, if you compare to some of our drivers that we thought were going to do decent, or I don't know how decent they were going to be, but compared to people outside of Formula One, like Stoffel Van Dahl, Pascal Wehrlein, and Felipe Massa, they were towards the end of the grid.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really expected Stoffel, Waffle, and Massa to get their act together for their second E-Prix and start to figure out things. But clearly, I mean, it's a lot to grapple with. I mean, regen on its own, managing your batteries, a lot to grapple with. But as former Formula One drivers, and one of them being a former title contender, you'd really expect more from at least Felipe Massa. But
as I watched the race, I noticed his battery usage was actually a little greater than most of the top 10 drivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just still grappling with all of the controls that he has to now handle on a single race, because he also has to handle all the same things that a Formula One driver has to handle with brake bias and all of that wonderful stuff, and add in a regen paddle and, making sure you're coasting in the right places. I mean, it's a lot to handle, so we'll see how he does throughout the season. I'm still a little interested in what Jean-Eric Vergne did at the beginning of the race. I mean, the fact that he recovered, because he fell from the top all the way back to the back of the grid and recovered to a pretty good 5th place, the Diaz Techeetah car really has pace. I think that's one thing that we learned from his recovery drive, is that it has a lot of pace without significant amounts of energy usage. I don't know what compelled him to go for such a bold move on the first lap.
I think bold moves are always a good thing to do, at least at the beginning. He had his window, or he had the option to take it, and I forgot who pushed him off to the side.
Sam Bird, yeah.
Sam Bird just pushed him off to the side, and completely legal move, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Sometimes you have to risk it in order to take it.
So, as a driver, you'd think that you would do the same thing in his position?
Formula SAE, we do not drive wheel to wheel, but I probably would, honestly.
Yeah, it's just send it. But I mean, I guess you got to send it when you got to send it. One thing I really liked about that entire incident, though, was if this were a lot of other racing series, the graphic that would have popped up immediately after that would have been car number 25 and car number 2 are under investigation for causing a collision and I mean, I think that they're allowing the drivers to make bold moves, and they're not additionally punishing them past what their bold move cost them.
I know at least this track, at least where they actually pushed each other off, they had a little more runoff area than some tracks, and at least compared to what you were mentioning, they have little or no runoff on some places, or it's gravel and grass, and that might be the end for someone.
Yeah, I mean that I think is a valid point. So the start of the race really eventful. Also, we have to mention that Sebastian Buemi just got caught out by all of that. I mean, they say that he was on the dirty line. He was the number 2 car, so he was on the outside line and just got John-Eric Vergne spinning off caused him to go wide, and he fell pretty far back. And I think one thing that we're a little surprised about, again, for the second race in the row, is the lack of performance from the Nissan E-Dams.
Yeah. Maybe it's one of those moments that everybody hypes them up too much, and all of a sudden they don't come up to what they think they should be going at.
Yeah, I mean, from a qualifying perspective, there's a huge gap between the two teammates. Oliver Rowland qualified 12th, and Buemi qualified 2nd, didn't he? Yeah. Oh, no, he didn't. Sorry. Buemi qualified 3rd. But I thought we would have seen a lot more recovery from Buemi after getting pushed off, but I just felt like he was constantly struggling for pace.
Yeah, it just looks like exactly what you said. Kind of wish... I kind of like that, at least Formula E, as we talked about earlier, being a cookie cutter package or a cookie cutter program, it actually has its, front leads, and it's kind of our people that go towards the back. Thankfully, at least everybody stays somewhat particular tight, because you saw the last lap of the race.
Oh my God, the safety car pulling in and making sure there was 1 lap of racing left. That was ridiculous. But before we get there, we got to talk about why the safety car was out there in the first place. Listen, DaCosta, Sims, what are you doing? It's
they probably wanted a copycat Lewis Hamilton and Nico.
From Spain 2016, but they couldn't even get that right. At least in that case, both cars were taken off. They didn't even get the full send on that. I mean... Listen, I understand you need to pass your teammate, you want to finish ahead of him, he's leading the championship, you feel that pressure, Sims, but it's the second race. There have been no indication of what team orders were going to look like. It was just happened to be whatever car was in front. I mean, there was that moment when DaCosta passed, but DaCosta was just faster. I don't really understand where Sims was going with a try to dive down the outside.
Sometimes, yeah, as I did say earlier, sometimes you have to take those bold moves, but I think at that point, that was maybe a little too bold, just because you had a hard left turn immediately.
Yeah, I mean, and you if you're going to go for a dive down the outside on a hard... I feel like when you go on the outside, you should not be braking late. That at first, I just have an issue with his driving technique there. Why are you braking late when you want to go on a pass on the outside? I feel like the move should be to brake slightly earlier and try to carry in the speed around the outside, so you at least are side to side on the right-hand turn. Because if you brake in too hard, you're going to have terrible exit corner speed. And on the outside, that's kind of critical.
Yeah, and I should have watched a replay on how much earlier his teammate braked. But, yeah, that was a little too dumb. And especially the way he lined up, he did hit the curb. And that's where he locked up, especially. So he did lose all control of his vehicle immediately after hitting that curb while he's on the brakes.
Yeah, I mean, the racing line was chosen to avoid that bump, and just takes a bump and locks up the wheels. But what's interesting to me is, why did DaCosta lock up? Like, that to me is completely... That was always the thing that kind of confused me, was if DaCosta hadn't locked up and he'd just, stayed on the inside, probably the worst case scenario was Sims losing about 3 seconds. But at that point, they were 6 seconds ahead and nothing would have happened. But... I mean, did you see any cause for DaCosta locking up?
I did not. I think they did have one attack mode left, so he could have played the strategy and hoped to pass him on a better straightaway.
Yeah, I mean, there was just screw ups on both ends by both drivers. There was no reason to It honestly just looked like DaCosta shit his pants. I think he saw his teammate diving on the outside. He's like, "Oh shit, I'm about to get passed," and just locked himself up. Which is not what you should be having out of a professional racing driver and a title contender.
Yeah, if you saw the video clips of him just constantly looking at his car without leaving, just very down in the dumps at that moment. knowing he, shaking his head the whole time. Maybe I think I could have saw a tear, but I could be wrong too.
Yeah, I mean, it's an emotional time when you crash out of a race in the lead, as shown by Sebastian Vettel at the German Grand Prix. But it's another thing completely to not only crash out of the lead, but for your team to be 1-2 and to remove both of yourselves from that position. And to be a part of that. And to do it on... I'm still not over the fact that it is the second E-Prix of the season. There are 11 more E-Prix to go, gentlemen. You have one of the fastest cars on the fastest car. You don't have the qualifying pace, but your race pace is absolutely amazing. They pulled out a 6-second lead on everyone else.
Yeah, they did. I think, who was it? Yeah, everything got backed up until they decided to act a fool. But yeah, they did have a pretty good lead. 40 minutes in. A little under 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Because then they caused a little mayhem in the last 5 minutes. Was fun.
And now we got to talk about who was the man of the hour of that race, which was Jerome D'Ambrosio. And we've talked about bad bold moves throughout the episode so far, but he made some pretty damn good moves throughout the race. I mean, started P10. No one was expecting anything from him. Honestly, he wasn't even the talk of Mahindra Racing because Pascal Wehrlein had come onto the scene, and everyone thought he was going to be a gem.
Yeah, I forgot what Pascal Wehrlein had another. I think it was technical issues that dropped.
Yeah, he DNF'd due to technicals, and I mean, so everyone had kind of looked Jerome D'Ambrosio had kind of looked over him the entire, I was gonna say weekend, but the entire day throughout practice, qualifying. But here comes the race, and I mean, this isn't the first time that Jerome has shown amazing race pace. And I don't think it's going to be the last. He did some fantastic passes throughout the race, but I think what was critical was Mahindra's strategy. If you notice, they really saved their attack modes up until the very last moment. What were you thinking about, like, with 40 minutes left and they hadn't used their last attack mode? What was going through your mind?
I was just hoping before the accident, I was hoping just for Mad Clon at the end, and assuming their attack modes actually close that gap within BMWs. I knew it wasn't going to be from a 6-second gap. I knew maybe it could go down to maybe a 4-second gap, but that still would have made it a much better fight at the end. But having that last dash sprint made it much better.
Yeah, and I mean,
at one point he almost gave it up. I think he did lock out.
Oh yeah, at the second, it was either the penultimate or ultimate corner. Robin Frains was, putting a little bit of pressure there on Jerome D'Ambrosio, and he just locks up at a corner you just shouldn't lock up at. But last corner had a little bit of a cushion and finished 0.143 seconds ahead. So, which I believe is probably one of the smallest winning gaps. I've got to go look that up. But if I remember correctly from Formula One, the smallest winning gap is 0.2 of a second, which was Alonso over Vettel at Singapore in 2010. But so it probably is one of the shorter ones for Formula E. But that was just an amazingly, there was a lot. We could definitely see that there was a lot of strategy with attack mode this race compared to the last one.
Yeah, especially now that it was drier for one. It wasn't chaotic, so everybody had the proper amount. I would assume a proper amount of time to get used to the track. Mm-hmm. And that allowed at least for a proper build up to the race.
Yeah, and it really showed that the teams had thought out their strategies. There's a lot of game playing with getting your attack modes. I think what's most critical about this race, though, is that Jose Maria Lopez did not miss the attack mode box.
That's good. I think he learned how to color within the lines for a second.
Yeah, I think he learned how the steering wheel operates properly and just knocked it in there. Did a great job. But exciting race, to say the least. I think another thing we should probably be talking about out of all of this is Andre Lauderer starting P20 and finishing P6.
Actually, I did not notice that.
Yeah, I know. He was kind of the silent. No one was talking about him throughout the entire race. He benefited hugely off the opening chaos for sure, but just charged right back up through the field. The Diaz Techeetah is showing a lot of pace, don't you think?
Yes, I do. I I kind of noticed that within the last race, but they keep they pretty much follow up each other. So they finish together pretty much. So as you did mention before, wherever there's so much your car could actually. So if you guys are placing right next to each other at every race, that means your car almost has a certain potential. Yes, the driver could actually drag it out for a little more, but I think having that mad dash 1 lap sprint did limit everybody to an extent.
Yeah, I think that definitely limited everybody. I think that the Cheetahs, if I remember correctly from the race, looked to be playing a bit of a power conservation game. And I think when the safety car came in, that kind of ruined their strategy because now everyone's getting power conservation in. So that kind of threw them for a loop. I think that, though, the thing that keeps rooting to Cheetahs is one of their drivers messes up. Every race. Like last race, I think it was drive-through penalties.
Yes.
Which caused issues. I mean, that was just a technical violation. But this race, John-Eric Verne goofed. I mean, yeah, it was a bold move, and it would have been cool if you did it. But if you look at the line he was taking, I don't think he would have made it. I didn't see that huge of a gap to begin with. I think the team is going to start having conversations about where their actual potential lies because it is only 2 races down. They're still title contenders.
Yeah, I know. Well, everybody's having issues with their, well, not issues, but playing the racing line as hard as they can. If I remember right, Sam Byrne got pushed out by one of the BMWs halfway through the race.
Yeah, when DaCosta went in for the pass, Sam Byrne just kind of gets a little pushed out because there's only room for one car going through that chicane.
And then he gets past pretty much.
Yeah, immediately. Yeah.
Since DaCosta.
Yeah, DaCosta did the original pass, and then Sims just. Yeah, I think Bird kind of just killed his exit corner speed at that point, and so Sims could just capitalize off of that. I saw some beautiful teamwork from the BMWs.
Yes.
Up until they hit each other.
Maybe they released the reins, or who knows what was going on from the paddock.
Yeah.
At that time.
I mean, it's always good to release the reins and let your team race, but it's always good to do that. But as Red Bull learned at Azerbaijan, it can bite you in the ass, and it did, and at a very early on point. So do you think that they're going to start reining them in a lot after this race?
I think they should at least. Yes, it's very controversial, at least since you brought up a Formula One team. Like Mercedes last year at Silverstone, they brought in the reins. Well, they also had inclement weather at the time, so they didn't want Bottas to hit Hamilton at the time, or one of those two hitting each other. So they did rein in the last 5 or 10 laps to not race each other. So that would have. I know Formula E doesn't have lap count, so maybe they should implement some kind of bring in the reins at the last 5 minutes to make sure everybody makes it home.
Yeah, I mean, even if you made that the last 15 minutes of the race, I feel like once you have a 6-second gap, you've got the lead solidified. There's no pit stops unless you have a technical issue. Nothing's gonna happen. If you're up by 6 seconds, which in Formula E is a dramatic distance that you don't see that often, tell your team to calm down and just do their thing, because it's not good for anyone if you just let them if you release the reins and they take each other out. And I mean that killed them in the standings, because if you look at it, Techeetah was leading the standings after the first race, because they got 29 points in round 1, and BMW was right behind them and they had 28. And so you really thought that this would be an opportunity for BMW Andretti to not only pass Techeetah but get a healthy lead. And by DaCosta getting knocked out and Sims falling, Techeetah actually extended their leads by 6 more points, and now they're number 1 in 47. And Mahindra Racing gets to actually claim the second spot with 40 points due to count back, and now Andretti's in third. And yeah, it's still early on, but this is the kind of stuff you want to avoid when it's, race 13 in New York, and it's your final chance to get in the team, get the Constructors' Championship, and you goof.
Definitely. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Yeah, honestly, I think we're all just stuck a little on BMW. Sure, Mercedes sales are going to go up this weekend. No, I'm kidding.
Oh no! One of my favorite memes from that day was when they had the safety car out and they had a picture of the safety car, which is a BMW, and it said, "At least there's one BMW in the lead."
Oh my God! Just don't crash into your team. I feel like it's not a complicated concept. Don't crash into your teammate. But let's talk about Felipe Massa for a hot second. Is this just a retirement glory party that he's trying to pull off here, or does he have a chance, or is he just done? Does he have no hope?
I would say as of now, it seems more like a retirement party, trying to at least. I wouldn't say he's trying to bring up the Brazilian life because there are other Brazilian drivers on the track, which
who he's picking fights with, by the way. Did you see that whole spat between PK and Massa?
No.
Like, Massa had a technical issue and was cutting in front of PK during the practice session, and PK said, "Get this amateur out of the way." And I'm like, Nelson Piquet Jr., your father was a good driver. You did not make the cut in Formula 1. Let's ease off of calling Massa amateur. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you were saying that he's just enjoying the retirement party?
I would say it looks like it, so I don't know what, Venturi actually offered him. Might be nice. Maybe they didn't have another driver in the lines.
I feel... I don't know. I feel like you could have offered Esteban Ocon a seat. I feel like he would have taken it.
I don't know. Maybe at the time they were just trying to find Formula 1 drivers to bring over at last minute because, we have two other recent Formula 1 drivers.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, it's starting to become a pretty stacked Formula 1, like, old-timers list. I mean, you got Stoffel, Pascal Wehrlein, Felipe Massa, Lucas Di Grassi, Sebastian Buemi, Nelson Piquet Jr. Like, I mean, it is a lot of ex-Formula 1 drivers, but I just think there's something... I hope by mid-season we'll have a better indication of where Massa stands. Right now we can attribute this to growing pains. If by mid-season he hasn't made much progress, I think what it's going to be is a Michael Schumacher 2.0 deal where when he returned to Formula 1 and just couldn't get it going again, I mean, you're old, my guy. I mean, it has to be said. And biology tells us old guys can't get up the speed.
Yeah, but Felipe Massa had other issues. He hasn't been as good as he had been since the spring incident.
Yeah, I mean, that was traumatic brain trauma. I mean, at first they weren't sure he was going to live, then they weren't sure he was going to be able to function normally, then they weren't sure if he was able to drive. And the fact that he made it to Formula 1 back is just a testament to his strength and perseverance, but it does mean you're never going to really be the same. But, so yeah, looking at these team standings, it looks like we've got an interesting battle brewing between Mahindra, Techeetah, and Andretti. But the Mahindra team to me has always just seemed a little, I'm Indian, so obviously go the Indian team. But do you think they actually have a shot at the championship, or have they just been lucky so far?
Hopefully it's not luck. At this point, obviously they have to work on their team points. Fix up whatever happened with Pascal Wehrlein to bring up their whole team up to par with the other teams. Techeetah, yes, they look pretty good. They're more consistent than anybody else on the grid. BMW looks really good, but they need to get their act together.
Yeah, not hitting your teammates for the 18th time this episode. I mean, so do you think BMW is going to run away with this provided they have no more teammate incidents?
I have a feeling they may have a few more teammate incidents.
You think this is the start of a brewing battle?
I feel like this might be like a back when what's his name on Force India, and they kind of let him run for a minute.
Yeah, Perez and Ocon on Force India. Yeah.
Those two were going at it. How many races until they finally brought in their reins?
Oh my God, it was too many, and there were too many incidents. Like front wings broken, drivers getting taken out. And that kind of started out of nowhere as well. So I can see where you're drawing the analogy here. Man, yeah, I think that's just a sign to the BMW team. I mean, I don't know if they listen to our podcast, but they really should. But if you're listening, BMW, please rein in your drivers because you got to get that settled now. But do you think deciding a number 1 and 2 driver is the answer?
I think they should have decided number 1 and 2, whoever qualifies first, and obviously let them race.
So a race by race case of who's number 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, I'm always worried about setting 1s and 2s even on a race-by-race basis. I mean, you go back to Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel and the whole multi-21 incident, and, that just spiraled that relationship out of control. I think it's risky to do that. I think that actually causes more team incidents. There has to be some form of just communication and telling the drivers to be responsible, or can you just not trust drivers in a race situation?
Yeah, even though the team I think that did pretty good for a short time would be back to Formula One, Toro Rosso. They kind of let each other battle.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Attempted to pass a car in front of it, they couldn't switch back.
Yeah, and I mean, just civility on the racetrack, gentlemen. Let's take the testosterone down by like 3%. Have some civility, and it should be fine. But I mean, I think we're here for a really good title battle. We have the reliability of the Techeetahs, the just amazing driving and race performance of the Mahindras. I mean, Jerome D'Ambrosio is just really good in race cases. I mean, this is technically his 3rd win, but his first on-track win.
True.
And he went a little crazy, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I thought he was celebrating a tad too much.
Well, it's been a while since he been up, actually won a complete race outright.
Yeah, and the fact that I think the best message, though, best radio message that I heard during that entire race was actually after the race when Jerome was having a free for all, and his engineer comes on. He's like, "Please be careful with the tires. It's the end of the race. We still have the weigh-in to do. Like, don't ruin our lives with this." But yeah, I mean, I think Mahindra is in with a shout. I don't think anyone expected them to be there. I mean, they expected them to get podiums here and there. I feel like they were expected to be a Red Bull, but I don't think they were expected to be title contenders. BMW can win this championship, period. Like, they have, in my opinion, if they get their drivers in line, they will win this championship. That is the only thing holding them back. They have good battery conservation. They have great on-track performance. I think their qualifying, especially in this past race, left something to be desired. But, I mean, if the race pace is there, the race pace is there. So it was good strategy this weekend. Just don't knock out your drivers. That was the only bad part of the strategy. Yeah, don't take your drivers out. Some team that I'm looking to start making moves is Virgin Racing. 0 points in round 1, 36 points in round 2. Do you think Sam Bird's going to try and make another play for the championship?
I hope so. Because they'll keep everything spicy. We have not had a multiple, I think, let me get my facts right, multiple champion in Formula E.
Yeah, we have not had a 2-time champion yet. It's about time, though. I think that should be he should be a good championship contender. But he was struggling for race pace. From the very beginning, he was lining them all backwards, and I think that there were some strategy mistakes as to when he went into attack mode, so gotta just clean that up. But after that, I mean, I think there's a significant drop-off in the quality of teams. So we're kind of looking at this 4-team battle right now. Nissan Edams has the money to make moves, so just clean up their act, and they can start making moves. And yeah, the rest of them are just trying to get their lives together. Audi apt is just what happened? Where did it go wrong? You have a former Formula E champion on your team. Where did it go wrong? You guys used to be up there every single time, and then the past 2 seasons, it's just last season at least you were still up there a little bit, but this season it's just been a crapshoot. I mean, 6 in round 1, 8 in round 2. I mean, you got the fastest lap, congrats, but Fernando Alonso got the fastest lap in a Formula One race and within a McLaren. So let's be honest here. I mean,
and that wasn't cutting corners.
Yeah, what? I mean, just guys, it's really disappointing to see from them. But any final notes for this race, Juan? Anything to look forward to before we go into our before we have our pre-race episode for San?
One thing I did find more interesting about this race, well, besides learning how to stay within the lines for attack mode didn't seem as overpowered in this track, along with the 3 out of the 5 drivers that received
fan boost. Yeah, it did. I think that they've reined it in a little bit. They learned their lessons, and I think they had a little better. I think that's why the strategy was more interesting, because it just wasn't in, like, Mario Kart. I got the Star of Invincibility. Here I come for the win. Like, yeah, it was a better thought out. I think if I had one note going into before we start talking about the next race, is that a lot of teams need to look back on this race and realize where they screwed up. Virgin needs to reconcile pace with battery conservation for me. I think that once they find that happy balance, they'll actually have a shot. We've talked about BMW over and over again, so I'm not going to beat that one more time. And Mahindra, just learn what you did right this race and keep doing that. And Techeetah, try not to get any drive-through penalties and try not to screw up next race, because you could probably finish 1-2. You don't do these things. Well, that's all we have for you today on our post-race analysis of Marrakesh. A lot of people called this the best race so far in Formula E history. I call it a race of screw-ups, so that's probably why it was one of the best races in Formula E.
Well, any series of racing, whenever they have crazy accidents left and right, it tends to be the best race of that season as of then.
Baku 2017. But yeah, I think that this is going to be... I think this just spells good hope for the rest of the season. But we'll see you guys again, hopefully on Wednesday, with our pre-race coverage of Chile. Thanks, and hope to see you again.
Bye.